Okay, may call us next witness.
The state would call Special Agent Dan Mosier to the stand.
Would you step up here, please, and I'll swear you in. You swear affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Dan Mosier.
Where do you work?
Presently, I work for Great West Casualty Company in South Sioux City, Nebraska.
How long have you worked there?
Since October of 2007.
Prior to working there, where did you work?
I worked for the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation.
In what capacity?
I was a special agent.
How long were you a special agent with the DCI?
From October of 1976 until I retired in June of 2007, 31 years.
Can you give us a brief background on your education, training, and experience in law enforcement?
I graduated from Northwestern College after high school and have a Bachelor of Science degree with an emphasis in social sciences and secondary education. And I was hired in 1976 as a special agent, at which time I attended the Iowa Department of Public Safety DPS Academy and successfully completed that. And then after that course of training, numerous different exposure to interviewing, crime scene, specifically homicides, fraud investigations, a litany of different disciplines to aid in being able to investigate crimes in the state of Iowa.
As a special agent with the DCI, what were some of your duties?
To investigate crimes and help local law enforcement resolve criminal matters.
Can you explain for the jury, how does the DCI get involved in an investigation?
Generally, we get a request from a law enforcement agency, a county attorney's office, or another government agency, could be another state agency. And after the request is made to the state, then an agent is assigned to assist that agency, or agents if it warrants more than one agent. And specifically in this case, in December of 2001, I was contacted and requested to assist the Sac County Sheriff's Office in the investigation of a situation that had occurred in the town of Early.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you remember what day that you became involved in this investigation?
December 13th, I believe.
And when you were contacted, where did you go?
Well, I traveled from my residence to Early, Iowa, making contact with my supervisor, and I don't remember exactly whether I was contacted by Sac County Direct or by my supervisor, but there was communication between my supervisor and I on this situation. And then I would have traveled directly to Early and made contact with the officers that were on the scene in Early.
And for the DCI, were you the case agent that was assigned?
Yes.
Explain what a case agent does.
When we work with a local law enforcement agency, there's a designated agent who has the responsibilities to coordinate that with law enforcement. If you're not a case agent, you're a supporting agent, and then you run leads and assist with that investigation. One of the main things was to make sure that the report was compiled and help the local law enforcement agency when decisions needed to be made on different investigative techniques that would be utilized to help resolve the matter.
On December 13th, what was your role at that time at this crime scene?
Well, once I got to Early, I made contact with the officers and determined through talking with them that the scene had been secured, got basic information on what they had witnessed and what they had run across, and then we would have made appropriate arrangements for the crime scene team to arrive so they could help us process the scene, control crime scene in and out of the scene itself, initiate things such as the neighborhood canvass, coordinate efforts with, in this case, we needed an autopsy performed. So contact was made with Dr. Carroll's office in Sioux City and a number of different logistical things such as that.
Were you present at the hospital when Lieutenant Sessford had an opportunity to talk to the defendant?
I was not.
A few days later, did you get involved in an interview of the defendant?
Yes.
What day was that?
I believe it was the 17th of December.
And why was it that you interviewed the defendant on the 17th of December if she'd already been interviewed at the hospital on the 13th?
Well, the initial interview was done, collected that information. We wanted to take the opportunity to see if we could develop any additional information that would assist us in resolving the matter.
And concerning the interview on December 17th of 2001 with the defendant, where did that take place?
I believe it was the Buena Vista County Sheriff's Office.
Do you remember who else was present for the interview?
Lieutenant Sessford and myself and the defendant.
And at the beginning of the interview, did you go through some background information with her?
Yes.
Did the defendant tell you her maiden name?
Yes, she indicated, I think her middle name was Ann at one time, and then she uses Richter as her middle name, and it was Tracy Richter Roberts, if I remember correctly.
Did she give you her married name?
Roberts.
Did she tell you how many kids she had?
Yes.
And did she give you the names of the kids?
Yes.
Do you remember the names?
Bert was the oldest, followed by Noah, followed by Mason, also known as May.
Was there a discussion during this interview regarding a computer that was found?
Yes.
What did the defendant say about that?
At the scene in a vehicle that was later identified as Dustin Whitty's, or the one that he utilized, there was a computer in the back seat of that vehicle, and we inquired if that unit was part of the Roberts household, and it was my understanding there had been a computer in Noah's room which was no longer there, and possibly the one in the vehicle was the unit that had been removed from the Roberts home, and Tracy described the computer was an old computer that they had obtained from their parents or her parents, and I think the intent was to use the computer for children's games because it wasn't as cutting edge as the current computers that were out, and it had not been utilized at that point in time. It was in Noah's room, I believe, on a dresser, if I remember correctly.
Did you ask the defendant about an orange ski mask?
Yes.
And why did you ask her about that?
There was a ski mask in, I believe, the master bedroom, and I wanted to determine if that was an item that had been brought into the scene or if it was personal property. And it was my understanding that They had similar items that had been purchased, possibly from Walmart or a facility such as that, and it was in connection with some hunting that her husband had done either that fall or the previous year.
Did the defendant describe what color of ski mask they had in their home?
Yes, orange.
And did she describe what areas of the mask would have been exposed?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Was there parts of the mask that were open you could see?
I believe she described it as a baklava, if I pronounced that correctly. And generally, I believe that may have eyes and mouth.
Did the defendant say if anybody in the house used the orange ski mask?
She indicated that once in a while, Bert may use it to play Army or to play, with that mask.
And did she say if her husband at that time, Michael, had any use for it, what it was bought for, the ski mask?
As I indicated before, she had purchased some hunting material or clothing or items so he could go hunting, and those items were orange, blaze orange.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm going to put State's Exhibit 37 on the Elmo. Can you see on this picture the item you've been talking about, the orange ski mask? Or do you need to see the picture?
I don't see it in that picture. Not from here. Oh. Yes, it's in the lower left on the floor.
It's hard to see there.
Oh, there you go.
Get better lighting there. So you're referring to, this was in the master bedroom found?
Yes.
That was the ski mask you were asking the defendant about during your interview?
Yes.
Did you ask the defendant anything about a knife in the bedroom?
Yes.
Why did you ask her about that?
During the processing of the crime scene, a knife had been located in the room, I believe, near or under the bed. I'm not 100% sure.
May I approach?
Yes.
A couple other pictures. State's Exhibit 44. Is this just another angle where the orange ski mask would have been by the door?
Yes, near the tent that is number 7.
Then State's Exhibit number 44. Is this the knife you asked the defendant about? Or let me ask it this way. Did you ask the defendant about a knife being in the bedroom?
I did.
And what did she say about a knife being in the bedroom?
She confirmed that she had utilized a knife in her bedroom. I believe she described it as possibly Chicago cutlery brand. And if I remember correctly, she may have used it to remove screws from a child's toy or something of that nature, and may have also used it to scrape off a sticker or something like that was on a mirror, apparently, in the room. And she accounted for the presence of that knife in her bedroom.
So the knife would have been there before December 13th?
That's my understanding, yes.
During this interview on the 17th, did the defendant say anything about talking to Marie Friedman?
Yes.
What did the defendant say when she talked to Marie Friedman happened?
Just prior to Marie arriving, I believe Dustin Weedy, she was talking to him, and Marie arrived, went to the south and east door, and then Tracy terminated her interview with, or not interview, but her conversation with Dustin, who was at the front door, if I remember correctly, and then went and made contact with Marie.
Okay. Before that conversation, Marie coming over, did she talk about talking to Marie on the phone that day?
I don't recall.
But looking at a transcript of that interview help?
Yes.
And Special Agent Mosier, is this a transcript of that interview?
Yes.
And if you just read to yourself the bottom of page 10 into the top of page 11, and let me know if that has refreshed your memory.
Yes.
Special Agent Mosier, during this interview, did the defendants say anything about, she claimed she talked to Marie earlier that day?
Yes.
What did the defendant claim was said?
There's discussion of whether their husbands would be returning that evening.
Did the defendant say who indicated their husbands were returning earlier?
I don't specifically recall.
May I approach again?
Yes.
Tracy said that she had talked to Marie earlier and thought the husbands were returning.
Okay. Did the defendant say who told her their husbands were returning earlier?
Marie.
Did the defendant say if she did anything in preparation for which she claimed her husband was coming home earlier?
There was some discussion about preparing supper, I believe, lamb.
Did the defendant tell you with the last time, or did she say timing when this happened? Did you ask her about when this all took place?
I was attempting to identify the time frame of the sequence of events, and I remember asking her prior to going upstairs with her children, if the news was on, trying to get a time frame with some type of television activity or something like that. She indicated they did not have a television or network news, and so that wasn't able to help the time frame. And she described some functions, laundry and things of that nature, before they went upstairs.
Did she say what time or the last time she remember looking at the clock before going upstairs?
It seems to be like 6 o'clock, but I can't recall for sure.
And if you look at page 11, line 438, does that help refresh your memory?
Shortly after 6, yes.
Was there something the defendant claimed they were going to miss?
I believe Bird had a basketball practice, and she got involved in activities. I don't think they didn't make it to the basketball.
Did or did not?
Did not.
What did the defendant say she did shortly after 6 p.m.?
They made their way upstairs, all of the children and Tracy, and the boys were watching television. Maybe May was in there to begin with. She decided to give May a bath, which I believe she accomplished, and shortly after that she stepped out of the bathroom when she noticed or heard individuals coming up the steps.
Did the defendant say if there were any lights on downstairs when they went upstairs?
Yes, she indicated that generally when they go upstairs like that, in order to help encourage the children to stay upstairs, the lights were generally turned off. I think with the exception of a kitchen light in this certain time frame, because she was still going to accomplish some items in the kitchen.
So the kitchen light was on?
I believe so, yes.
And how about the other lights downstairs?
They would have been turned off, is my understanding.
Then you mentioned she said she heard something. What happened then, did she say?
As the best I recall is she was coming out of the bathroom with May in her arms and noticed or heard persons coming up the step. And she made eye contact with one individual through some towels or items where a banister was at the staircase, and she made eye contact with that individual. I believe she indicated she thought there was another individual behind the first person she made eye contact with. She got an uneasy feeling, realized it wasn't anyone she knew, her husband or Raymond, and she then made haste to go to the bedroom where her two boys were, where she put May into the room. And as she was doing that, I believe she indicated she had her hand on the doorknob. The doorknob was, the door was pulled shut. I think she mentioned she gave instructions to Bert to lock the door. And then she was pulled or attacked from the back and pulled. Eventually she was pulled down the hallway, as I recall, where she eventually passed out.
When you were having the defendant describe what happened that night, did she say initially when she heard the noises if she was concerned when she heard noises downstairs?
I got the impression that initially not, until she made contact and realized that she didn't know the persons that allegedly were coming up the steps.
And when she saw these alleged people coming up the steps, did she initially tell you she had any concerns about people being there?
Well, initially, she thought possibly it could be her husband or Raymond, but when she made eye contact, she knew it was not them.
Did the defendant give you any details how she was assaulted?
Well, after being pulled back from the door, she indicated that she passed out. I believe she was choked, and then she came to, and then she wasn't clear on the time frame, but indicated she heard a conversation down the hall where her children were. She was able to get up, at which time the people that were supposed to be in the hallway noticed her. She then turns in the opposite direction to go to her master bedroom. Again, someone is on her. Again, she's being pulled back. Again, around the neck, as I understand it, and she's resisting forward, and at some point in time she goes limp and releases that pressure, and then is able to get away, and she makes it into the bedroom.
I want to go back. When you said the defendant said she was being choked, did she say what she was being choked by?
Eventually we talked about some pantyhose, which she described to be consistent with pantyhose that she had possibly hanging over the banister where the towels were when she made first eye contact with the persons that were supposed to have entered her residence.
Did you ask the defendant her height and weight?
There was discussion on that because number one, I think I asked about the brand and the type of pantyhose. She indicated that she bought those based on the size of the individual they were purchased for. And then there was discussion about her height when we were trying to get additional information on the description of the individual that she allegedly encountered.
Did she tell you what her height was and weight back in December of 2001?
I remember 5'8", and I'm not sure the weight. 145 pounds comes to mind, but I can't remember if she was describing that as part of the chart that you apparently utilize when you're deciding what size of pantyhose to purchase.
Would looking at the transcript help refresh your memory?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
You may.
Special Agent Mosier, I've handed you page 21 of this transcript.
Yes.
Does this help refresh your memory?
Yes.
And it was concerning a discussion about the pantyhose?
Yes.
And did she give you a height and weight description?
Yes.
And what was the height she gave you?
5'7".
And how about how much the weight?
145 pounds.
Did the defendant say, did you ask her if she actually passed out or lost consciousness?
In the initial attack, when she was pulled back from the door, partially down the hallway, yes, it's my understanding that she lost consciousness.
May I approach?
You may.
If you look at the top of page 22 of that transcript, let me know if that helps refresh your memory.
Yes.
What did the defendant say about passing out?
She can't remember passing out.
What does she remember?
She remembers a time when she was getting up by the guest room.
Did she say what was going on when she was getting up by the guest room?
That's when, as I indicated earlier, she recalled a conversation near the doorway of our children, and she got up, I believe, and may have thought about heading in that direction, but then she alleges someone came towards her again, which caused her to be contacted again. She struggled, was able to get free, and then make it to her bedroom.
And did you say if the person during this struggle was doing anything to her specifically?
Was pulling back again, I believe, from some type of method around her neck, and then that's when she, instead of pulling away from it, she released, and that caused a separation, which allowed her to make her way to the bedroom.
Did she say what the person was wearing that she claimed she was in a struggle with?
At some point in time in the interview, she indicated that she may have reached back, I don't know, to embrace herself as they were going back or what, but she made contact and felt leather, and at some point in time she said she smelled leather, indicating a jacket, and we discussed what length it possibly could be.
Where did the defendant claim she went after she broke free?
After the second alleged incident in the hallway, she then made it to her bedroom, to a position to the right of her bed, and it was my understanding she had a gun safe there, and it had a combination, a locking mechanism, and she was manipulating that in an attempt to retrieve a handgun she knew to be in that safe.
Prior to her telling you about the gun safe, was there any discussion whether or not she was wearing her glasses before going into the bedroom?
At some point in time, she indicated that her glasses were knocked off and were, after the incident, retrieved by her daughter, May.
Did she say if it was in the first struggle or the second struggle?
It was my understanding from the initial contact.
And did the defendant say whether or not how her vision was without her glasses?
She indicated she had poor vision.
Did you ask her during this time also about the locks of the door to the house?
Yes.
And what did she tell you?
She indicated that generally the home is locked. There were no signs of forced entry, so we were trying to determine how that could be unlocked. She indicated that those locks were on her doors were unique because if you utilized them, you had to relock them if you wanted them locked. So if manipulated, is my understanding, they stayed unlocked, and I have one similar at my residence, so I found that to be consistent. And you do have to manipulate it, lock it, to make sure that it is locked. So we were discussing that situation. She indicated Marie used the door, and that Bert was arrived home in a similar time frame, and indicating those were possible opportunities for that door to be unlocked.
Did she say if she was home during the day, would the doors still be unlocked or locked?
I'm sorry?
Did the defendant say if she was at home during the day, would the doors be locked or unlocked?
Generally, it was my understanding the doors were locked.
Did she say anything specifically about the front door?
That it was my understanding that door was seldom used.
Did she say anything about the front door, if it would be locked or unlocked?
It would be locked, and you might have to look for a key just to get it open because it was used that infrequently, as I understood it.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I've handed you page 28, if you want to take a look at that, concerning the front door, what the defendant specifically told you about the front door. Let me know if you had a chance to review that.
I have.
Okay. What did she specifically say about the front door?
That is, it is always locked.
And did she say, you said something about a key?
Yep. Sometimes they have trouble finding a key to open it.
So I'm sorry, going back, the defendant said she ran into her room, and then what did she tell you what happened when she got to her room?
She went for the safe, was attempting to get in the safe. At this time, she's alleging that somebody was on top of her, pulling her by her ponytail. And sometime during this third attack, the first in the bedroom, somebody may be trying to pull her legs or her feet. She struggles, is able to get the safe open, and retrieves the handgun.
Did she say with what hand did she grab the handgun with?
With her, I asked her about her strong hand, her right hand.
Did she tell you which gun she grabbed?
Eventually, we determined that she had grabbed a semi-automatic.
What did the defendant claim she did after she got the semi-automatic out of the safe?
She attempted to utilize it, but it did not discharge, and then she manipulated it until she was able to release the safety, and at which time she turned the weapon behind her or over her right shoulder, I believe, and discharged it.
Did she demonstrate how she did that?
Yes, she did, because I made comment which shoulder, and she helped clarify right shoulder, and she confirmed that.
So did she say how she held the gun over her right shoulder?
I don't remember that.
Did she say how many times she fired the gun at that time?
Eventually, she, if I remember correctly, and I can't remember if this is after she turned, she indicated she had trouble hearing and remembers the flash, and I don't know if she turned at that time, and she wasn't standing. She may have been crouched and or sitting when she says she thought she remembers the first flash and then discharged after that, and I don't remember a specific number of rounds that were discussed, other than she said she only saw one flash.
And we're looking at the transcript again, help refresh your memory.
Yeah.
Special Agent Mosier, I've handed you page 34 of the transcript. If you look at that and review it to yourself and let us know when you're through.
Yes.
Did the defendant say how many times she thought she fired the gun?
She indicated that she remembers one flash. She closes her eyes and doesn't remember seeing any other flashes.
So after the first flash, the defendant said she closed her eyes?
That's my understanding, yes.
Did defendant say if she fired any other shots with her eyes closed?
It was my understanding that additional shots were fired with her eyes closed.
Did the defendant say how many additional shots she thought?
I don't recall, no.
And if you look at specifically line 1433.
She indicated that she'd willing to bet her life that she didn't fire more than 4.
What did the defendant claim she did after the shots? These 4 shots.
After the initial volley, I think the threat allegedly there was no longer an attack. She couldn't see anybody in front of her. The door would have been in her line of vision with a light on down the hallway. Her room would have been dark. She noticed some movement off to the left, I believe, and it moved from left to right and out the doorway. And she heard running down the steps, maybe even jumping down the steps, and then running, if I remember correctly, through her dining room. And then she recalled still hearing breathing in the bedroom as she sat near the bed and near the safe.
What did she do then? What did she claim?
If I recall correctly, she tried to make observations where the noise was coming from. She may have grabbed the second weapon. At that time, I'm not 100% sure, but she eventually was able to move forward, saw something, I believe, to her right. She couldn't discern whether it was a duffel bag because apparently they had duffel bags in that bedroom at one time or another for travel. But she saw something. She made it past whatever was on the floor and then was able to go towards her children.
Did the defendant tell you what position she was in when she fired the shots?
It's my understanding that she was able to turn around in that space between the wall and the bed and face towards the doorway to the room and fired in that direction.
Did she say if she was standing up or sitting down or what she was doing?
It was my impression she was either sitting or maybe kneeling, but not standing.
May I approach? Yes. Special Agent Mosier, you said that was your impression. I want to make sure it's clear. Page 40, if you would read that transcript. Have you had a chance to read that?
Yes.
During this interview on December 17th, did the defendant ever say that she stood up during the shooting?
No.
What did she tell you?
She was able to turn around. She was on the floor the whole time and was sitting, leaning back in a crouching position.
Did she give you any descriptions of the alleged intruders coming up the stairs?
Yes.
Was she able to identify or describe both alleged intruders?
The first one she had eye contact with, and she described approximate age, hair color, and I think a black coat. The second individual that she says was also present, she could only discern that there was a second individual. There was no additional description.
What is the description she gave you of one of the alleged intruders?
Age 35, I believe fair complexion, no facial hair, dark brown hair, wavy but not styled. That's generally what I recall at this time.
Did she say if he was wearing glasses or not?
I do not believe there were glasses.
How about his height?
We talked about height in relationship to her. She mentioned her husband, who claimed to be 6 foot, but he wasn't quite 6 foot. And then she talked about her brother, who was taller, maybe 6'3", 6'4", and it was my impression it was not the individual was supposed to be shorter than her brother, but a little taller than her husband.
Did she say whether or not this alleged intruder was taller than herself?
I believe she said yes.
And did she say what type of anything he was wearing that stuck out?
Black leather coat.
Did you talk to her about, at some point, looking at photographs to see if she would be able to recognize this guy?
I was trying to determine if she felt she could make an identification, if we were able to identify individuals that we wanted to put in a photo lineup or something of that nature. She indicated that she thought she could, and in addition to that, there's always the possibility of a composite.
Did she say anything about either of these alleged intruders wearing any hats or masks?
It was my understanding there were none.
May I approach?
Yes.
Special Agent Mosier, I've handed you page 44 of the transcript. If you take a minute to look at that.
Yes.
And after reviewing that, did the defendant during this interview say if either intruder was wearing any hats or a mask?
She did not remember any hats or masks.
So she said that there was something on the floor. What did the defendant say she did next?
I'm sorry?
You were telling us that the defendant described shooting, and there's something on something. Did she say there was something on the floor?
As she listened after the individual allegedly left the room and left the house, she was able to get towards the edge of the bed and did hear some breathing in the room. Wasn't sure where it was coming from. She saw something off to the right or at the foot of the bed. She couldn't discern what it was, but she did make it past whatever was on the floor, which later turned out to be dust and weedy. And then she went down the hallway to where her children were.
Before she went down the hallway, did she grab anything else?
Yes, as I indicated before, she had grabbed a second weapon from the safe.
What happened when she went down the hallway? What did she say?
She went down to her children. She had contact with her son, opened up the door, He allegedly almost hit her with a bat. I think she noticed movement, or anyhow, she had her children stay put for a second. She went down to the bedroom again, and the individual on the floor, Dustin Weedy, was allegedly attempting to get up, and she said something to the effect, "Stay down, don't get up," or something, or words to that effect. And the figure we now know on the floor, we now know to be Dustin Weedy, was rocking in some fashion, trying to get up, at which time she discharged at the individual on the floor, Dustin Weedy.
Did she say which gun she used?
I believe the one in her right hand, which would be the semi-automatic, did not fire, and so she would have used the other gun in her left hand.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Special Agent Mosier, I've handed you 2 more pages. If you could go read to yourself pages 47 and 48, and let me know when you've completed those, please.
Yes.
So let's go back. When you said the defendant said she saw movement again in the bedroom, what did she do then?
She told her children to stay. Told Bert to yelled at Bert, told him to stay, and she remembers walking to the bedroom, yelling, "Don't move, don't move," and she indicated that the individual she turned on the light at some point in time before she discharged, and then.
Well, I want to back up. When she went in and she yelled at the person, "Don't move," did she say what the person was trying to do?
He was trying to get up.
And did she say what she did when the person was trying to get up?
She attempted to fire with her right hand and not be able. It did not discharge, and that's when she fired with her left hand.
I'm looking at page 47, line 2039.
Yes.
Did she say she tried to fire with which hand?
It's my understanding she was unable to fire with her right hand, and she fired with her left hand, and the person went down.
Then she did what?
Turned on the light.
And did she see or hear anything after she said she turned on the light?
Remembers to see the person was rocking, trying to get up.
Did she say anything then?
I believe she indicated
I'm looking at...
I'm going to object this line of questioning.
the government can provide the transcript to former Special Agent Mosier if he doesn't recall, but I believe he's testified and not indicated that he needed his recollection refreshed. So he's simply reading from the transcript and an objective. I can take the transcript away, Your Honor. Okay, so she said she turned the light on, then what did she hear or see?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Yes. You said she turned the light on to the bedroom, then what did she hear or see?
I remember her telling me that because of the smoke as a result of the discharge of the weapon, the fire alarm went off.
Did she say if the person, when she turned the light on, was doing anything?
Rocking, trying to get up.
Did she say or do anything when the person was rocking and trying to get up?
She discharged the weapon.
Did she say with which hand?
Left.
Did she say how many shots?
I don't recall.
Would looking at your transcript help refresh your memory?
Yes.
Should you page 48 of your transcript, read that to yourself, and when your memory has been refreshed, please let me know.
My memory is refreshed.
All right. Grab that. What did she say how many shots she fired with her left hand?
1.
Did she ever say anything about firing any warning shots?
No.
You said something then about a smoke detector?
After she discharged in the bedroom, after she went down there and turned on the light, the smoke detector was initiated because apparently smoke from the discharge of the weapon.
Did she say anything about her glasses at that point?
It was mine. She did not have her glasses on. Those were retrieved after she discharged the weapon, turned on the light, pulled the door, partially closed it, as I recall, and ushered her children downstairs. I think the 2 boys made it to the landing. They became afraid. They realized May wasn't right with them. May was apparently picking up the glasses, and I think Bert went, retrieved May, and then Tracy got her glasses.
Did the defendant during this interview say anything about seeing Dustin Weedy that day on December 13th?
She told us that, or told me that she had, told us, that Denny was, Lieutenant Sussford was there, that she had seen him about the time that, or at the time Marie arrived.
Did she say what Dustin wanted when he came to the house?
It was he was looking for employment, possibly copies to be made or some function of that nature.
Did the defendant say what she told Dustin regarding the copies to be made?
That he would have to make contact with her husband when he returned.
Did the defendant say if somebody came when Dustin was there?
Marie Friedman.
Did the defendant talk about a trip that was coming up?
Yes, we became aware that the family had planned to travel to Australia.
I want to go back. I forgot. I'm sorry. When Dustin was, the defendant said Dustin was at her home, did the defendant say when Marie came what happened when Marie arrived?
Apparently, Dustin and Tracy were at the front door, and Marie went to the side door, or the south and east door, rang the doorbell. At that time, Tracy excused herself and she indicated that an employee at the company, Zelex, would have telephone numbers where she could be contacted if necessary.
Do you have any recollection about how long this trip the defendant was going to be gone to Australia?
I do not recall specifically, but I thought 10 days to 2 weeks.
Were you aware of what items were found in the car that Dustin Weedy was used?
I recall some of them, yes.
Okay. And was there anything in the car that was something law enforcement was trying to was concerned about?
Well, during the processing of the car, we found a spiral notebook that was pink in color, and then upon examination of that, we saw some writings contained in that notebook that gave us some concern.
And did you interview witnesses in this case?
Yes.
Did you show them the pink spiral notebook and talk to them about the content when you were interviewing any witness?
No, we realized with that point in time that the information contained in the writings contained in that notebook were possible key to identifying who may be involved in this matter. So we made a decision that we would not reveal the contents during the course of our investigation in hopes that that would reveal who was responsible or involved in this incident.
And at some point, did you show Mona Weedy and her husband any parts of the pink spiral notebook?
Just one page in an attempt to identify the handwriting to confirm that the documents or the pages in the spiral notebook were authored by the victim.
May I approach?
You may.
Special Agent Mosier, I've handed you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 87. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
And can you tell us what State's Exhibit 87 is?
This is one page from the pink spiral notebook.
Is this the page you would have shown Mona Weedy and her husband?
Yes.
Does this appear to be a fair and accurate copy of that page?
Yes.
And did you do some writing on it as well?
Yes, I did.
The State would offer into evidence State's Exhibit number 87.
No objection, Your Honor. Received.
Permission to publish?
May.
State's Exhibit 87, Special Agent Mosier. At the top, there's some writing. Can you see that?
Yes.
And is that the writing you showed to Mona Weedy and her husband?
Yes.
For what purpose did you show her that writing?
To determine if the person that authored that writing that you see on the screen was authored by Dustin Weedy.
In State's Exhibit 13, the pink spiral notebook, did you ever show the actual notebook to Mona Weedy or your husband?
No.
The copy that we have, State's Exhibit 87, was that a black and white copy, or did you show her a color copy of the spiral notebook?
It would have been black and white.
Then at the bottom of State's Exhibit 87, there's some writing. It says Dustin's handwriting according to Mona and Brett, 12/18/2007. Whose handwriting is that?
That is mine.
And that's based on statements after you showed this page to them?
That's correct, yes.
And clear for the record, Brett would be Dustin's
father.
Then at the bottom, you have some other, is that your handwriting at the bottom?
Yes, it is.
And what does that say?
Mona had just purchased notebook for school, had similar at house.
Now, did you tell Mona the color of the spiral notebook?
I don't know. I don't recall. It's been 10 years.
So when you were asking her about spiral notebooks and you only showed her one page, do you know what conversation was discussed?
Well, the notation would indicate that they had similar notebooks, and with children that were in school, that was reasonable.
Did you ever show her the rest of the content of this pink spiral notebook to see if she would either recognize the writing or anything like that?
No, as I indicated before, it was law enforcement's desire to keep the information in the notebook close to the vest, so if an individual in the future revealed knowledge of the content, then that would give us an indication they may be responsible or involved in this incident.
Special Agent Mosier, did you set up or try to arrange with the defendant to do a composite?
Yes.
What is a composite?
It was our wish to have an identikit, which is a system where a witness would work with a professionally trained individual to help put together a picture, a composite of an individual, and in this case, the person that Stacy observed from the shoulders up. She had eye contact with, indicated to me that she believed she could identify in the future, and we hoped that a composite would aid us in identifying the second individual, if in fact there was one.
And did you make arrangements with the defendant to set one up somewhere?
Yes.
And where did you attempt to set one up?
The Sioux City Police Department was the closest location, and with someone that was trained in putting composites together. So I made arrangements with Sioux City Police Department. They agreed, and we attempted to do it on February 20th and or 21st.
And through your experience in law enforcement, can composites be helpful in an investigation?
Yes.
How so?
Well, I have utilized them and been involved in cases where bank robberies and things of that nature, the witnesses will do a composite. We will get a likeness of the individual that they saw. We would publish that information, and many times witnesses, the general public, will provide us leads, possibly identify the individual, and with further investigation be able to make a positive ID and determine whether the individual was involved in the incident.
And in this case, did the defendant follow through and show up for the composite?
No.
Your Honor, would this be the appropriate time for our lunch break?
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our noon recess.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Mosier, before our lunch break, we were talking about the one page of the pink spiral notebook you showed to Mona Weedy and her husband. And you dated it December 18th of 2000. It looks like it's a, can you tell us what year that is? It's hard to read.
2001.
Did you continue the investigation in January and February of that year?
Yes.
What type of things in general did you do in this case to investigate it?
Like I mentioned before, we attempted to, do the composite. We followed up on additional leads as they developed. I remember having contact with a couple of individuals and interviews being done after the initial few weeks, and the case remained open until just before I retired.
And in 2001, did your job duties also entail other tasks that you had to do?
Well, we just didn't have one case to work. We had multiple investigations that we would manage and assist local law enforcement. And then shortly after this incident, I would have joined the Joint Terrorism Task Force, the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, and JTTF, and would have been assigned to assist in that national security effort.
And while working on the Joint Terrorism Task Force, did you continue as you were the case agent to follow up leads in this case?
I monitored the situation, and when items came to my knowledge, we would have collected that. And I remember seeing supplemental reports being submitted into the case file as late as 2005.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Finisher?
Thank you, Your Honor. Please support. Now, Mr. Mosier, my understanding is that you no longer are a special agent, correct?
That's correct.
Would you like me to refer to you as Mr. Mosier or Special Agent Mosier? Tell me what you prefer.
Either. I will answer to either.
Mr. Finisher, could you get your...
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Mosier, my understanding is the case agent would be, your responsibility would be to coordinate between the local law enforcement and the DCI crime personnel, correct? Is that fair?
That's one function.
And, well, let me back up. Assuming that a county law enforcement contacted DCI,
Yes.
and they were requesting assistance, then you as the special agent would be responsible for coordinating between local law enforcement and the DCI crime personnel.
I believe that's correct, yes.
And then your responsibility would be to basically act as a liaison between the county officials as well as the crime scene personnel.
To work the case jointly, yes.
Okay. And in this specific case, you would have worked primarily with former Lieutenant Dennis Sesford, correct?
Yes.
And when did you join the Terrorism Task Force?
I think it was mid-2002.
And would it be fair that at that time that would have taken more time than this investigation?
The leads on this investigation had dwindled, and then I would have been spending more time in that Joint Terrorism Task Force effort.
Now, just to make sure I'm clear, right before lunch, you indicated that you were going to have a composite sketch drafted for Tracy either February 20th or February 21st.
That's correct.
And I'm sorry, of 2002, correct?
Yes.
And it was Tracy's father that declined to do the composite sketch, correct?
I was contacted by Mr. Richter and advised that his daughter would not be attending the identification process that afternoon of the 21st, if I recall correctly.
And do you know what Mr. Richter would have done prior to retiring?
It was my understanding he was a Chicago police officer.
And so the decision to do the composite sketch, at least what you were told, was based upon Mr. Richter's declining that composite sketch rather than Tracy Richter, correct?
All I know is Tracy did not attend the event. Mr. Richter indicated that he did not believe they were reliable and caused problems in court, which I didn't understand.
Would have you also been able to do photo lineups?
If we had developed a individual that was a second intruder, but we never were able to identify anybody, or even if there was a second intruder.
Okay. But that would be common police or law enforcement practice, correct?
It could be a technique used.
And when you do a photo lineup, you would have a number, I assume you would have 5 or 6 different individuals. You'd have photographs of those individuals, and you'd provide that to people for identification purposes.
Our practice was a minimum of 6 to include the individual you wanted to be in that spread, yes.
And to your knowledge, that was not done in this case, was it?
No, we did not develop any information to indicate a viable individual as a second intruder.
Okay. You indicated on direct examination that you would have interviewed Tracy on December 17th of 2001.
Yes.
And her statements to you, if she experienced what she told you, you would expect her to be shaken up to some extent, correct?
Would you? I'm not sure.
She relayed to you that 2 intruders came into her house, assaulted her, and then she shot and killed one of them, correct?
Correct.
While her 3 minor children were in the house. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Just so the court reporter can get it done. You'd expect someone who had had that type of situation happen to them that they would be shaken up.
I think that's correct, yes.
And in that interview, Dustin Weedy, strike that. In that interview, Tracy indicated to you that Dustin Weedy made her feel uncomfortable, didn't she?
From prior contacts, yes.
Okay. And that Tracy told you that she wanted Marie Friedman to spend the night?
That was my understanding, yes.
And there was testimony on direct examination that she had made lamb for dinner?
That's my understanding, yes.
And she told you in that interview that she didn't like lamb, that she was making it for her husband?
That's my understanding, yes.
And did you find lamb in the crock pot that night?
I do not recall.
That's fair. And based upon the fact that she's making lamb for her husband, would that lead you to believe that, in fact, she thought her husband was coming home that night?
It's a possible scenario.
Well, if she doesn't like lamb, would you agree?
I don't know if she likes lamb or not.
That's fair. And when Tracy told you that she heard noises downstairs, she thought that that was her husband and Ray. I assume you mean Ray Friedman?
Correct.
Okay. And these 2 intruders in the Roberts residence, if they came in without permission, in that situation, that would be considered a burglary, correct? If the suspects would have been caught?
Yes.
Okay. And if Tracy's hair is pulled and she's restrained with pantyhose around her neck, you would agree from a law enforcement's perspective that would be an assault?
I agree.
You testified that when Tracy got up off of the ground, that she went towards the two intruders that were standing in front of Bert Pittman's door, correct?
After the first
Yes.
incident in the hallway, where
Yes.
she was pulled, and then she woke up, is that where you're...
She came to on the floor, got up, and then she went towards where the two intruders were in front of Bert Pittman's door.
She turned in the direction of where that bedroom was, yes.
And when she saw the other intruders coming towards her, she turned around. I think that was your testimony, correct?
That was my understanding, yes.
And would you agree, based upon that statement, that Tracy was retreating from the two intruders at that time?
That would what you tried to tell us, yes.
Oh, and you weren't there, I wasn't there, but if she runs towards the intruders, they see her, and then they run after her and she turns around, she's retreating or trying to get away from the intruders. You'd agree with that, wouldn't you, sir?
Yes.
You indicated that you didn't observe any signs of forced entry, correct?
That's correct.
And that there was a key to the front door?
I never saw the key. Referring to the front door, the indication to us was that the front door was used rarely, and the indication was sometimes it's hard to locate a key for it.
Okay. Do you know whether, I looked through the government's discovery, and I did not see any reference to the front door key dusted for fingerprints. Were you aware that that front door key was ever checked for fingerprints?
No, I don't know. Unlikely you'd find any fingerprints on a key.
You would not find fingerprints?
Unlikely, yes.
And according to Tracy, Dustin had been at that front door earlier that day at the time when Marie Friedman showed up on December 13th of 2001?
Yes.
And if that's accurate, then we know at least one time on December 13th that that front door would have been unlocked, because that's where Dustin knocked or came up to the door on that day.
Yes.
And you testified that you had a similar type of door and that you have to specifically lock it back up. It will not automatically lock.
When I was speaking of that, I'm talking about the door off of the kitchen, or the south and east door, not the front door.
Oh, excuse me. You would have communicated with Mr. Sessford, the Sac County Lieutenant, and then the crime scene personnel was Robert Harvey and Linda Knitting, correct?
Correct.
If I understand your responsibility in this matter, your job wouldn't have been so much to look at the crime scene evidence. That would have been the responsibility of Mr. Harvey and Miss Knitting.
They would have processed the scene, yes.
And so Mr. Harvey would have a better idea of where the bullet trajectories would have gone at the time of the shooting, correct?
Mr. Harvey is a firearms expert, and that would be accurate.
In your investigation, did you check the key that Marie Friedman had used on December 13th of 2001 to see if it was where Marie had placed it?
I have no information that indicate there was a key that Marie would have utilized.
Okay. And are you aware that Tracy Richter's clothes were not taken from her at the time that she was after she was transported to the Loring Hospital in Sac City, Iowa?
Yes.
And Lieutenant Sesford testified a few days ago that the reason why he did not take Tracy Richter's clothes or do fingernail scraping is because he believed it was self-defense. Do you disagree with Mr. Sesford's assessment at that time? Yeah.
Just so it's clear for the question, is he asking Lieutenant Sesford's opinion initially or at the end of the investigation?
I think he said at that time.
I did. That was the last thing I said.
Thank you. No objection to the question.
That was the information that was provided to him in the initial stages of the investigation, and that would be accurate.
Well, and you believed that the evidence was consistent with Tracy's statements, correct?
Which evidence?
Well, did you do a report on March 28th of 2002?
I'd have to see the report.
That's fair. I'm going to ask you about a few reports, but the first one would be a March 28th of 2002 report.
Okay.
I can show, well, let me do it this way. Do you have any reason to disagree that that was your report that you authored on March 28th of 2002?
It appears to be part of my report, yes.
And would you turn to the highlighted space on page 3 of that document?
Okay.
Does that reflect your recollection on whether you believe that the evidence was consistent with Tracy Richter's statements 5 months after the shooting?
This would be referring to the discharge of the weapon, not the totality of the statement that was collected.
Okay. Was that your report, sir?
Yes.
And would you read the highlighted parts for the jury, please?
Special Agent Mosier indicated that crime scene technicians as well as investigators were familiar with the characteristics of blood in flight, and that initial observation indicated that evidence at the scene was consistent with the sequence of events that have been relayed to investigators by Tracy Roberts.
And that's your report 5 months after the shooting, correct?
Talking about the discharge of the weapon, yes. That was the intent of the statements.
Well, and you seem very articulate. I assume this, Mr. Mosier, that if you didn't agree with that statement, you wouldn't have put it in your report.
This is an interview with Brett and Mona Weedy, okay? And during that, we were asked questions about the crime scene had been cleaned up, and they had got some information from persons that were involved in that process. And we were, at least I was trying to convey to them that we were proceeding with the investigation and observations that we made at the time, again referring to the discharge of the weapon, whether or not there were two individuals in the house or if the attacks actually occurred. But that segment of the investigation was consistent because we were talking about the bullets and the incident in the bedroom.
Judge, may I publish that part of his report into the record?
If it's just a highlighted portion, there may be other portions to make sure that aren't.
That's a good point. Let me look at that for just a second. And I just want to make sure I'm reading that. S.A. Mosier, that's you, correct?
Yes.
Indicated that crime scene technicians as well as investigators, you're the liaison between the two of them, were familiar with the characteristics of blood in flight, and the initial observations indicated that the evidence at the scene was consistent with the sequence of events that had been relayed to investigators by Tracy Robbins.
Once again, the intent of that paragraph is about the discharge of the weapon and the evidence around that narrow part of the events, not the totality of the rest of the information that we collected.
But you have already testified that you would have done a lengthy interview with Tracy, correct?
I was involved in that, yes.
And that would have been 4 days after the shooting.
Correct.
And this is, the date of this report is March 28th of 2002. And I can show it to you if you like. It's not a trick question. Just take me a minute. Sorry to see everybody's helping me here.
Yes.
And am I correct that this would have been March 28th of 2002?
That's the date, yes.
So that's at least 3 months after the shooting.
Yes.
And you're not simply relying on what other people have told you in the totality of circumstances. You've interviewed Tracy, correct?
Correct.
And if you thought her statements were inconsistent, I assume that you would have put that in the report.
Not necessarily in that report to the Wheaties. The whole situation was volatile with everything that was going on, and my statements to the Wheaties was not to inflame that situation.
And I'm sure, Mr. Mosier, that it was a volatile situation. I'm not trying to say it wasn't, but this wasn't a report that you were showing Brett and Mona Wheatie, correct?
No, but it was to document what was shared with them, yes.
Okay. And I've seen a number of your reports, and we're going to go through them. I don't see any report where you say that Tracy's statements are inconsistent with the evidence regarding the bullet trajectories or anything else. Did you write a report where you indicated that Tracy's statements were inconsistent with the shooting?
I did not write a report with that information.
Okay.
That's a conclusion that would have been drawn over the length of the investigation.
And if you would have had information or documentation that you believed her statements were inconsistent with the evidence, I assume you would have drafted a report to that effect.
I would have collected the information. I gather information. My opinions are not that vital. It's what the prosecutors, the court, the jury believe from the information that I collect. My opinions are of some value, but it's facts and information that's presented in this situation that is vital.
Sure. And do you have any specific facts that you can tell the jury today that you have proof that Tracy Richter was not acting in self-defense on December 13th of 2001?
A number of things come to mind, to include the fact that we never found a second individual.
Okay. Let's talk about that. Your first interview of anyone that at least I saw would have been Dustin Weedy's father, Brett, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, you went over to the Weedy residence within 24 hours of the shooting, and you would have looked on the caller ID.
Correct.
Do you have a recollection of that?
I have that documented in the report, yes.
Yeah. And can you tell the jury why you would have done that?
Just to try to memorialize what was going on at that time.
Which makes sense. And do you remember the two individuals that were identified on the caller ID of the Weedy residence on December 13th of 2001?
There was a gentleman by the name of Mendenhall and Collins.
And what, if any, investigation did you do regarding Aaron Mendenhall?
I don't recall at this time.
Okay. Would have Aaron Mendenhall been one of Dustin Weedy's sister's boyfriends? Does that refresh your recollection?
I believe that's accurate.
And you'd agree that at 4:34 p.m. That a Jeremy Collins would have called the Weedy residence?
Yes.
And that would have been the last person who would have called the Weedy residence prior to Dustin's shooting on December 13th of 2001?
That's the last number that I recorded, yes.
And tell this jury specifically what you did immediately to look for Jeremy Collins.
We documented the information, and in the future, if we needed to, we'd expand on that. I know that we would have got his basic description, and we eventually learned that Mona Weedy was involved with Mr. Collins, and about that time there was less urgency to follow up on some of those things because there was no second individual.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about that. And you indicated that we did investigation. Who specifically investigated Jeremy Collins within the first week of the shooting?
I'm not sure anybody did in the first week.
Okay. And in fact, when I took your interview, you indicated that you didn't have a recollection of doing any investigation regarding Jeremy Collins.
At the time you took my deposition, no.
Has your memory been refreshed?
I became aware that there was information in the sheriff's file to include a driver's license.
Okay, and that would have been obtained in 2005.
I don't know the date of that driver's license. I thought it was 2002.
Okay, well, did you?
2001. I can't remember.
Okay. Did you do any personal search yourself?
I did. I did not.
Okay. And in reviewing the first report that you did with Mona Weedy, well, let me back up. On the interview that you would have done with Brett Weedy, that would have been the December 13th of 2001. That would have been the day of or the early morning hours of December 14th, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And he told you at that time that they had paintball exercises that Dustin would do with Michael Roberts in houses near either Odebolt or Ida Grove.
Yes.
And that Brett Weedy had locked up his guns to keep them from Dustin?
Yes. I don't know if he kept them from Dustin. He locked them up.
Did he tell you why he locked up his guns?
I'm sorry. This is hearsay, Your Honor. Objection, hearsay.
What's your understanding, sir, of why Mr. Weedy was locking up his guns?
Before you answer, may I voir dire this witness? Special Agent Mosier, your answer, based on that last question asked, is that information that Brett Weedy would have provided you?
Yes.
Do you have any personal knowledge? Do you have any personal knowledge of that, or is it information you learned from Brett Weedy?
It's information I learned from Mr. Weedy.
I would object. It's hearsay.
What investigation did you do regarding these paintball incidences where 16 people would gather and shoot each other with paintball. Did you do any investigation regarding that?
I don't know where you got the number 16. All I know is that during the course of the investigation, we learned that Michael Roberts had befriended Dustin, and one of the things that he attempted to do to get to know him and was to participate in paintball exercises as well as take him to church.
Sir, you indicated that you had no idea where I'd come up with the number 16
I don't
for
recall that
paintball.
number.
May I approach, Judge? I'm handing you the interview that you would have done of Brett Weedy on December 13th of 2001. Do you recognize that document?
Let me take a look at it.
Sure.
Okay.
Does that refresh your recollection on 16 people doing paintballing either in Audible or in Ida Grove?
I didn't see that phrase.
Here.
You'll have to.
I direct your attention to page 3. If you will look at the third full paragraph, can you read that to the jury, please?
Several people, maybe up to 16, not 16.
Okay, is this your report?
Yes.
And were you the one who put up to 16 people were in these paintball exercises?
Yes.
And it was either Odebel or Ida Grove?
Yes.
And do you know where Jeremy Collins lived?
Ida Grove area, I believe.
And this was the report where you determined that Jeremy Collins would have been the last person to contact the Weedy residence on December 13th?
Yes.
May I publish this to the jury, Judge? And I'm going to cover up the rest of this, but I want to make sure it's clear when that call came through. Can you see that, Mr. Mosier?
Yes, what part are you looking at?
I just want to make sure, first of all, you can see it, sir. And the last half sentence that says at 4:34 a telephone call was registered to, and after that it indicates what we had talked about, that number would have gone to, that number would have been for Jeremy Collins. This is the 4th page of your correct. Okay. And you then interviewed Mona Weedy on December 14th, the day after the shooting, correct, sir?
I believe that's correct, yes.
On your report, I believe it indicated September 14th of 2001, but that just would have been a typo, correct?
Correct.
When is the last time you would have looked at your interview of Mona Weedy on December 14th of 2001?
The deposition?
Okay. And that would have been the deposition that we had a discussion, the two of us?
Yes.
Do you need to review it again to refresh your recollection, sir?
Depends on the question you're going to ask.
That's fair. I just wanted to know if you wanted to do that before I...
Ask the question, sir.
Sure. In the interview with Mona Weedy, you would agree she made no reference to Jeremy Collins, correct?
Not at that time.
And she also indicated to you that she believed that Dustin was thought that he was supposed to go down to, well, let me get the exact wording, please. Did Mona indicate that she believes Dustin would stop down at the Roberts home and or business in the past, and believes 2 days ago stopped down to check to see if there would be a job available for him, and Dustin got the impression there would possibly be some copying or something of that nature that could be done and possibly get a job? Apparently Dustin was under the impression that after a couple days he would go back and then find out if there would be some type of work available for him.
May I see the report?
Well, of course you can. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay.
Was I stating that accurately?
I believe so, yes.
And I assume that if Mona Weedy would have told you regarding Jeremy Collins, anything about Jeremy Collins, you would have included that in your report?
Correct.
And if there had been any other statements that Mona had made regarding the reason why Dustin would have been at the Roberts residence on December 13th of 2001, you also would have included that in your report?
We would have tried, yes.
And my understanding also is that telephone records were obtained via subpoena of the Roberts residents, their telephone calls, and the Weedys, and that's Brett and Mona Weedy's telephone calls. Do you know whatever happened to those records, sir?
I do not recall.
Did you ever see those records?
I do not recall.
To your knowledge, were the telephone records that I was just discussing, were they ever obtained?
I don't recall at this time.
If former Lieutenant Sessford indicated that he compared the long-distance telephone calls to Michael Roberts' statements...
If that's what he said, then he got the records.
Yes.
Okay.
And so my question is, does that refresh your recollection about looking at either the Roberts telephone records or the Weedy's telephone records?
Lieutenant Sessford would have accomplished that task. I don't recall looking at them.
Okay, that's fair. You would have interviewed both Tracy Roberts, or Tracy Richter now, and Michael Roberts?
When?
Well, we've already talked about you interviewing Tracy on December 17th of 2001, correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay. And you also interviewed Michael Roberts as well?
Eventually, yes.
And he was viewed as a suspect in this case, wasn't he?
Early on, everybody is a suspect.
Okay. And let's go back to that. I'm unclear when you found out you know that the last person to call the Weedy residence was Jeremy Collins, correct?
Correct.
And in reviewing your 4 or 5 reports, I don't see any reference in any of those to a Jeremy Collins. Would you disagree or agree with that statement?
Well, the one with, I guess if you're referring to the report of when we documented that telephone call, Mr. Collins is in that report. Other reports after that, I'm not sure. I don't recall. I don't think so.
Let's put that in context. The only reference that I see in any of your reports is the first day when you talked to Brett Weedy, and the only reason why you knew about Jeremy Collins was because you saw that name on the caller ID.
Later, we learned through an interview with Mona, Lieutenant Sessford learned that Jeremy Collins was involved romantically with Mona Weedy.
And when did Lieutenant Sessford tell you that?
I don't recall.
Do you remember having your deposition taken on October 10th of 2011?
Yes.
Counsel, I'm on page 62 of the deposition. And if you don't mind, I'll read the question and I'll read where it says Q, and will you do A, the answer? Do you have a recollection of Dennis Sessford telling you at the end of December 2001 that Mona Weedy had told her that she thought that Jeremy Collins was the second intruder? Would you please read, sir?
I don't recall that.
And if Dennis Sessford also testified that he would have provided you that information to you for you to do further investigation, you'd disagree with that assertion? No, you're right.
I understand. I want to read that again. Not necessarily.
Well, what specific investigation then would have you done, you personally would have done regarding Jeremy Collins?
I do not recall. Based on the information at the time, if I thought Jeremy was viable, I would have pursued it.
Okay. Do you know what Jeremy Collins did for a living?
I do not recall.
Well, do you have any reason to disbelieve that he would have quit his job at Schwann's on December 11th of 2001?
I don't have knowledge of that.
Do you know what kind of vehicle he was driving at that time?
I don't have that knowledge.
If it would have been an extended cab pickup truck and witnesses in the neighborhood where the shooting occurred saw an extended cab pickup truck that would be similar to Jeremy Collins, would that be an issue for law enforcement to investigate?
I'm going to object to that question. That misstates the record. There's no evidence in this record that Mr. Collins owned an extended cab pickup. The state's recollection is testimony he owned a regular short box, silver, not an extended cab.
Judge? So, Mr. Mosier, if Mr. Collins would have owned an extended cab pickup truck at the time of the shooting and witnesses observed an extended cab pickup truck at the time, shortly prior to law enforcement being called, would that be relevant as the special agent in this matter?
It could be, but keep in mind that a second intruder was not established, so pursuing that didn't make a whole lot of sense at the time. We had captured Mr. Collins' name, and we could expand upon it if new information would have indicated.
And you and I went through your deposition, page 62, and I specifically asked you if you had a recollection of Dennis Sesford telling you that Mona thought that Jeremy Collins was the second intruder at that time. I don't have a recollection. Well, when did former Lieutenant Sesford tell you that he knew about Jeremy Collins?
I don't recall at this point in time.
And my question is, the case agent, what specific actions did you do to investigate Jeremy Collins?
We captured his name in the report, and if we would have needed to expand on it, we could have. There was no second individual. There was no reason to pursue that, in my estimation.
So you decided, without ever interviewing Jeremy Collins or looking at his employment history or his DOT records, you personally as the case agent, that he wasn't involved?
There was no need. As this progressed, we had not run across any additional information to support the defendant's statement as two intruders. And when she failed to assist us in a simple procedure of trying to develop a composite of the intruder, that caused me some concern. The notebook itself caused me concern. So Jeremy Collins' name was captured, and at some point in time, if additional information developed, we would have pursued it. There was no need.
Mr. Mosier, if I understand, your belief on the investigation regarding Jeremy Collins had to do with the Sac County Sheriff's Department pulling Jeremy Collins' driving record, correct?
That's one thing that I became aware of, yes.
Okay. And tell me what else you specifically did to investigate Jeremy Collins.
We documented in the file, and if we needed to pursue that in the future, we would have.
So if I understand your testimony, your only affirmative activity or action in this matter was writing it down in the file that was the last telephone call made, was Jeremy Collins. You didn't do anything else to investigate him personally, correct?
We learned that Mr. Collins was involved with Mona Weedy. I was not interested in confirming whether or not she was unfaithful or involved in an extramarital affair. We had no information that there was a second individual, and had we developed additional information and we needed to expand on Mr. Collins, we would have, and we had captured the name. And we documented the information. We gather information and document it for possible leads.
Are you aware of a gentleman by the name of Special Agent Villita?
Yes.
And Special Agent Villita went to Germany in 2009 to interview Jeremy Collins. Were you aware of that?
I was not.
When did you retire? I'm sorry, you told me earlier.
2007.
And up to and including 2007, other than pulling Jeremy Collins' driving history and you noting in your report that he was the last person to call, do you know if anybody, either with Sac County or with the DCI, ever did any investigation regarding Jeremy Collins, other than what you've told me up to this point?
Not other than what I've mentioned.
And it was when you showed Brett and Mona Weedy the journal, or the front page of the journal, you wrote on it at the time that Mona Weedy confirmed that it was Dustin's handwriting, correct?
Correct.
And she also indicated to you that that she had purchased the notebook for Dustin.
That isn't what I said. The notation is similar notebooks, not the notebook.
Okay. And as Dustin's mother, you'd expect her to buy him notebooks, correct?
He was not in school. She bought notebooks. She had other children in school.
I want to make sure you and I are talking about the same thing, and I'm sure you do too. This is your handwriting, correct, Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
And it says Dustin's handwriting according to Mona and Brett.
Yes.
And the date is 12/18/2001. I hesitate because it looks like 2007, but we both agree it's 2001.
It is.
And
I've been retired in 2007 at that time.
well, that's why I smiled. I'm just saying it looked to me like it said 2007. That's why I hesitated. It says Mona had just purchased notebook for school, had similar at house.
Correct.
And would those be pink spiral notebooks?
Spiral notebooks in general, as I recall, and she indicated she had some similar at the house. Spiral notebooks.
Well, it just said just had purchased notebook for school. So Mona would have known the color of this journal, correct?
I don't know if Mona knew, well, I don't know if she knew about that journal and the color. I don't know.
And this is what you showed her on December 18th of 2001.
Yes. Or something similar to that. Not that one exactly.
My understanding, Mr. Mosier, is that you would have been present when Robert Harvey viewed the contents of the white Pontiac found at the Roberts residence, correct?
Yes.
Would have you been present when they fingerprinted the vehicle?
We moved the unit from the Roberts residence to a county facility a few blocks away, and I was at that facility.
And at that time, were you present when items were taken out of the vehicle?
I remember taking a look at the journal. I don't remember or participating in the processing of the car.
Okay. May I approach, Judge?
Yes.
This is State's Exhibit 64. And my question to you is this would have been the trunk of Dustin's vehicle. It was actually registered to his father. Do you have a recollection of the contents of that vehicle in the trunk?
I remember when we returned the vehicle to the Wheaties that the trunk was opened up. So I don't specifically remember when this photograph was taken, if I looked in the trunk then, or when it was returned to the Wheaties.
We're not done with that photograph. Do you see that there's a black bag in the inside of that trunk?
Yes.
And do you remember what was in that black bag?
I do not.
Was there a packed belongings for Dustin?
I don't know.
Oh, you already said that you didn't remember. You would agree that there were at least 4 bullets that were not removed from the floor of the master bedroom after the shooting? Because there was no further evidentiary value?
In discussing the situation with Bob Harvey, that was my understanding, yes.
And why didn't you take into possession Tracy Richter's clothes after the assault?
I was not present when that examination was done, and those procedures were done at the hospital, and I would have been the distance from Early to Sac City, and when I got there, I believe that was done.
What was done?
Was the interviews and that examination by hospital personnel, photographs were taken, and documentation. I trust that the determination was there was no evidentiary value.
Sure. But you're the case agent. You're the one who makes determinations because Sac County has called you in for your expertise. Fair enough?
We assist, yes.
And you would have made the ultimate call on whether Tracy Richter's clothes would have been taken into custody for review, correct?
Tracy's clothes were not taken.
But that would have been your call?
Not necessarily.
And was it your call?
It was. They were not taken. And when I met with Dennis Sesford later in the evening, those procedures were already done.
But my question is, just specifically answer my question, is that your call to make as the special agent?
It could be one, but in this case, I didn't have the opportunity to make the call.
Could have you gone back and got Tracy Richter's clothes later?
Tracy was already gone, and the chain of custody of those clothes we couldn't have verified.
Just yes or no, could have you retrieved Tracy Richter's clothes that she used at the time of the assault?
If she would have given them to us, yes.
Well, was she refusing to give them to you?
It was never asked, sir.
Did you ever ask for fingernail scrapings?
No.
In Dennis Sesford's testimony, he indicated that in his investigation, there was some reference to a Mark Byham, B-Y-H-A-M. he would have been a friend of Michael Roberts. Do you have any recollection of doing any investigation regarding a Mark Byam?
I don't recall at this time.
And we talked about your March of 2002 interview of Brett and Mona. Remember when we were talking about that earlier?
Yes, sir.
On page 1 and 2, Mona Weedy makes a reference to a possible person that may be the second intruder. She wanted to provide you information, correct?
And the individual you're referring to is?
In the first page or two of that document, there was someone from a nursing home that she thought might be the second intruder.
Yes.
And who was Mona Weedy at that time telling you might be the second intruder?
John Steffen?
Yes. And in your report, please review the entire thing. Does Mona Weedy make any reference to Jeremy Collins in that interview?
In my scan, I did not see any mention.
And I understand that this was 8 years ago. I assume that if you would have asked Mona Weedy at that time about Jeremy Collins, you would have incorporated that into your report?
I believe that's correct.
And can I assume then that Mona Weedy has not told you about Jeremy Collins up to this point, or you would have memorialized it in your March 28, 2002 report?
Dennis Sessford obtained that information, and I don't recall the date of that. Mona tried very hard to provide us with information to assist us in this investigation, and at some point in time, she was even sharing information about an individual she was romantically involved with.
Page 71. We'll do this again if you don't mind this way. I'll ask you the question, you can read the answer. And do you have a recollection of Mona Weedy ever telling you that Jeremy Collins may have been involved in the shooting?
I don't recall at this time. I don't know that it was said.
Can I assume that if she had told you that, it would have been in your report?
Jeremy Collins' name came...
Please just read the answer, sir.
Oh, I thought you were asking me a question.
No, sir.
I would believe so, yes.
May I publish this to the jury?
Yes.
And is that what we just read, starting where it says the first Q and then your answer, and then down to the second A for answer?
Yes.
And do you still have that report in front of you?
If you're referring to the Brett and Mona Weedy report, Yes.
On March 28th of 2002?
Correct.
Mona also indicated in that interview she wanted to make sure that she had had a conversation with Tracy Richter on the day before the shooting, or December 12th of 2001, correct?
And where in this report are you referring?
That's fair. It would have been right below where we highlighted earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Just acknowledging where you were referring to.
Just the court report can only take down affirmative answers. That's why. Right below the highlighted part, Mona Weedy indicates that she allegedly had a telephone conversation with Tracy Richter on December 12th of 2001, correct?
Correct.
And you interviewed Mona the day after the shooting, and she simply told you that she thought that Dustin might have been down there, correct? Do you want me to give you your report again?
No. Mona Weedy was interviewed more than once, and she provided information as she recalled it, and we documented it.
Okay, and maybe you didn't hear my question. You interviewed her on December 14th of 2001.
Correct.
And at that time, she specifically told you that Dustin thought he might have worked down at the Roberts residence, correct?
That's correct.
And 3 months later is the first time that Mona Weedy tells you that she allegedly had a telephone conversation with Tracy Richter on December 12th of 2001, where Tracy was specifically asking Dustin to come down.
During that time period, and I also believe it mentions a real estate transaction. Mona Weedy was a real estate agent at the time. There was a pending real estate transaction that was to occur shortly after the incident, and she mentions that, and at which time she did relate to us about a conversation she recalls about a possible work, yes.
Okay. But I want to be clear. The day, within 24 hours of the shooting, Mona Weedy simply says she thought that Dustin might have worked down at the Roberts. That's what she told you, correct? Yes or no?
Those are the words or the information we received from a mother that had just been advised or had knowledge that her son was killed, possibly murdered, and I would expect she might not remember everything at that time.
Sure. Same thing when you interviewed Tracy Richter on December 17th of 2001. If she's just been assaulted and she's shot and killed Dustin to protect herself and her children, she's going to be a little shaken up, and she may not remember everything either, would she?
And we waited 4 days and interviewed her again to give her that opportunity, and then they left shortly after that, yes.
We'll get to that in a second. Just yes or no, Mr. Mosier.
I'll answer it that way if I can.
Well, I'm going to instruct that you do so, and Mr. Hamran can clarify things if he needs to. On December 14th of 2001, Mona Weedy specifically told you that Dustin thought he may have work at the Roberts residence. Yes or no?
I'm going to object. This has already been asked and answered.
Well, I haven't had a...
Objection is overruled. Want me to repeat the question?
Please.
Okay. On December 14th of 2001, Mona Weedy specifically told you that Dustin thought he may have work at the Roberts residence, yes or no?
That was information that she conveyed to us, yes.
And on March 28th of 2002, let me make sure I have it correct. Mona Weedy then says, I want to make sure that the investigators knew that on December 12th of 2002, before the shooting, she had a phone conversation with Tracy where she talked to Tracy while she was at a residence in Early. You see that? That's your report?
Tracy, while she was at her residence, Mona stated that she called her about a real estate transaction.
And I'm just asking you to confirm up to where I've read to, sir.
Well, I could, yes.
Okay. And would you agree that that's substantially different than what she told you the day after the shooting? Yes or no?
It's additional information she provided.
Is that the information she provided on December 14th of 2002 or 2001?
No.
You testified on direct examination that the Roberts had already had a trip planned to Australia, correct?
My understanding.
If you believed that Tracy Richter, there were going to be pending charges regarding this December 13th, 2001 shooting, as the special agent in charge, you wouldn't have let her leave the country, would have you, sir?
I did not have enough probable cause at the time to affect that travel outside the United States.
But if you would have had that evidence, I assume that you would have blocked her from leaving the country.
I don't know that I had that authority.
Yes.
Mr. Mosier, did you also interview Brett and Mona Weedy on December 18th of 2001?
Yes.
And in that interview, do you have any reference to Mona telling you at that time that she believed that Jeremy Collins was the second intruder?
I don't see any reference to that.
And if she would have told you that, you would have put it in your report?
That's correct.
And she told you Dustin's mental health issues included, but weren't limited to schizoaffective disorder.
Objection. Excuse me. Objection at this point. These are assuming facts, not an evidence. It's hearsay. If I can voir dire the witness to show the court this witness has no.
May we approach, Judge?
Sure. Any further questions from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Speaker or microphone again.
Yes, thank you, Judge. You would have interviewed Michael Roberts in October of 2002, correct? You did interview Michael Roberts in October of 2002, correct?
He was interviewed. I don't recall the date.
Did you interviewed Michael Roberts at the Storm Lake Police Department on, February 13th of 2002, correct?
I interviewed. I don't recall the date.
And at that time, Michael indicated to you that he had been paintballing with Dustin Weedy.
Yes.
Michael told you that he had had contact with Dustin Weedy and that he had told Dustin issues concerning John Pittman.
I'm going to object at this point. Your Honor, may we approach?
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our mid-afternoon recess at this time. A few matters let's take up the present objection initially.
Yes, Your Honor. The state objected to the last statement read by the defense counsel. They're trying to get in. Special Agent Mosier interviewed Michael Roberts, and apparently it was in February of 2002. Now what Mr. Banstra is doing is he's reading from the report, which is hearsay, because he's offering in Michael Roberts' statements that he made to Special Agent Mosier. They're offered for the truth. If their claim that their subsequent conduct was a claim at the sidebar is, if they want to ask who they interviewed and who the suspects were, that's one thing. They're offering those for the statements that he's trying to get Michael Roberts' statements into this record as hearsay. They're offered for the truth. They're not relevant for any other purpose. This witness has already testified earlier on cross-examination that initially they did consider him as a suspect.
Is Mr. Roberts going to be testifying in this case?
Not on behalf of the state.
Judge, he was identified as a government's witness. The government's argument is that no one else knew about the information in the journal other than John Pittman and Tracy Richter. This is this investigator doing a subsequent investigation. Mr. Roberts clearly is a suspect at this time because they're doing they say objective testing that I'm not going to identify what it was, but it was addressed in the motion in limine. It clearly is relevant to statements made by him in a subsequent conduct. This specifically is they're setting their sights on Mr. Roberts at the time. They modify that to then look at my client. Clearly, if they're making allegations that my client was the only one who would have known that information, it's clear from Mr. Mosier's report that, in fact, that wasn't the case. I'm not using it to prove the matter asserted. I'm using it to establish what his understanding was based upon a police investigation.
No, what you're asking in your question was whether Mr. Roberts had told Dustin Weedy information regarding Dr. Pittman. That was the question, and that is hearsay.
Okay.
So objection is sustained in that regard. In regard to that question, it's sustained. Now, what about your offer of proof?
Judge, the offer of proof is this. In the March of 2002 interview,
I think it was the interview with Mona Weedy, if I'm not mistaken.
that's correct. I'm just trying to figure out which one it is, Judge, so I apologize for making the court wait. And of course, it was right.
December 8th. I'm not sure.
Yes, I'm sorry. Mr. Mosier, in your interview, you have a recollection of your interview with Brett and Mona Weedy on December 18th of 2001?
I have to look at the report.
You have a recollection of specifically asking Brett and or Mona Weedy what Dustin Weedy's mental health issues were?
Yes.
Sir, you'd agree that you were told by Brett and Mona specifically that Dustin had been identified as being depressed, manic depressive, bipolar, and also there was indication that he had attention deficit syndrome and oppositional defiant disorder?
Yes.
And that he also had a mild case of schizophrenia and possibly was autistic?
Yes.
And that he was on the medications of Prozac and Ritalin and other different types of medications?
Yes.
And that she was concerned that her son would commit suicide?
In the past, yes.
The next sentence, Brett Weedy told you that he indicated that sometime back he took all the guns that he had owned in his shop so they could better be secured. Did he say that to you?
Let me see that. Yes.
And did that specifically have to do with Dustin and his actions? For being the cause of the guns being secured?
Your question again, sir?
That based upon his mental health diagnosis and other information found, the reason for Brett Weedy securing the guns was based upon Dustin's actions and mental health issues.
Brett only said, and I recorded, that he sometime back took all of the guns that he owned to his shop so they could be better secured.
And what was your follow-up question to Brett Weedy regarding why he secured his guns?
There was no, we just talked about the guns, verified them, and I don't think Brett ever commented about why he put them in there.
And as the law enforcement, chief law enforcement officer at this investigation, why didn't you follow up on why Brett Weedy was securing his guns?
Mona Weedy indicated earlier that she feared for her son.
Judge, I made my offer of proof. I'm asking that this witness be able to testify to what his understanding of Dustin Weedy's mental health issues were. It was part of his ongoing investigation. It's relevant to this matter, and we would ask that we be allowed to ask him this series of questions in the presence of the jury.
What's the state position?
Your Honor, because it's an ongoing investigation, it's not a hearsay exception. The mental health records this witness received was from Mona Weedy and Brett Weedy. That would be knowledge that he has no personal knowledge. So he has no personal knowledge of that information. Mona Weedy is testifying. Obviously, if she has knowledge of Dustin's mental health history, if it's relevant, that'll come out through her testimony. They don't have to get into the specifics. The argument is, it's sort of they're arguing it's why they didn't do subsequent conduct when this officer has just explained it. The guns were removed according to Mona because...
Actually, I'm not looking at the gun issue. Are we looking at the gun issue?
I addressed that again because I just revisited because that was part of the report. My real focus is the mental health diagnosis.
Okay, if we're looking at the mental health diagnosis, there's no reason that this witness has to get into the specific statements as far as their hearsay. If this witness wants to ask, if the attorney, defense counsel wants to ask this witness, did they discuss his mental health history with Mona Weedy, the state doesn't object to that. Did they follow up anything after that? I'm fine with that. They get into the specifics of what the diagnosis were. That's hearsay, and Mona Weedy, if she has knowledge, will be coming in and she can testify to those matters. So we would object for the specific diagnosis as hearsay.
On a foundational basis.
Correct.
What about that?
I'm just saying, just a second, Judge, and I want to respond. Well, Judge, my first response is I was confused when Mr. Hammerhand indicated that this is an ongoing investigation. I mean, Mr. Mosier's made it clear there wasn't a second intruder. They didn't need to look. So I'm not sure there's any ongoing investigation. But if they want to object to this at this point for hearsay, then I guess we'll just hold Mr. Mosier over, and then we'll see what Ms. Weedy testifies to and what she doesn't, and then we'll maybe have to recall him back.
Yeah,
if that's how they want it. What
so
they
it's
want
clear is, I think the initial objection was that it brings in facts not on the record, and that is the basic foundational issues concerning the mental health. From that standpoint, I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay.
Now, if you can bring Mrs. Weedy in, the mother, and if she has the necessary foundation to testify about her son's mental issues, that's fine and dandy. But what do you need Mr. Mosier for?
Well, Judge, I would, and it'll depend on Ms. Weedy's testimony, obviously.
Okay.
But if Ms. Weedy would come up to the stand and she would say, my son never had mental health issues, or she said this or that, then I may have to recall, and I hate to tip my hand, but I may have to recall Mr. Mosier on that issue. So that's what I meant. If they're objecting to on hearsay grounds now, that's fine, but I may be recalling.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right. The ruling is still the same. The objection in regard to foundation and also facts on the record is still sustained. All right, let's take a break for about 10 or 15 minutes.
Thank you, Judge.
All right.
Please be seated. Mr. Bannister, may continue.
Thank you, Russ. Mr. Mosier, I'm going to ask that after you testify, you'll remain in the courthouse until after Ms. Lee testifies. Would you be willing to do that, sir?
Is she going to testify today?
That's up to the government.
Your Honor, the state has 2 witnesses yet for the afternoon, and if she's not completed, then I guess I can't promise she's going to get done today.
Let's just put it this way, that Mr. Mosier can be recalled.
Okay.
All right?
That's what I need. Thank you.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I have travel plans for Thursday and Friday related to my employment, so that's a complication for me.
Now, and Ms. Weedy will certainly be testifying by tomorrow.
Right, and if they want to recall her, the state anticipates being done by noon tomorrow, Judge.
All right. That'll be all right?
You bet.
Very good.
Mr. Mosier, the first few months after the shooting, December 13th, 2001, you thought that this was self-defense, correct?
The first few months,
Yes.
I think it was trying to keep an open mind to the investigation. That was a possibility. As time went on and the lack of information that would support that, and definitely after February 21, I began to doubt that is the reality of the situation.
Yes or no, you told other law enforcement that you believed it was self-defense within 2 months after the shooting, correct? Yes or no?
Other law enforcement?
Yes.
I don't recall.
Your last interview that I have in my report is March 28th of 2002, which we were just talking about, correct?
I don't know if that's the last interview I was involved in.
That's the last one that I've been provided with. Have you done additional interviews?
I believe there were interviews after that.
Have you done any reports since March 28th of 2002?
As I indicated before, I submitted supplemental reports as late as 2005.
On this case?
Yes.
May we approach the bench, Judge? Mr. Mosier, in reviewing the government's discovery, did you ever do a full report after the March 28, 2002 report that you did regarding Brett and Mona Weedy? Because I did not see it in the government's file.
We do supplemental reports that are put into the appropriate sections of the report, and there is a witness list that says as of May, I think, some 2004, 2005, and that would indicate to me that a supplemental report was done after the date that you gave me.
And would that be a narrative report, or would that be an interview?
That would be a structural part of the report for witness list and a certain section within the report.
Mr. Mosier, you never did a formal investigation on Jeremy Collins, yes or no?
We captured his name and documented it in the file.
Is that a formal investigation, you writing his name in a file?
That's capturing information, and that's part of our responsibility, is to capture information so we can pursue logical leads as the case would dictate.
What's the answer to my question, sir?
I just gave it to you, sir.
Did you interview Jeremy Collins, yes or no?
I did not.
And other than putting his name on the first interview with Brett Weedy after you found his number on the caller ID, what specific investigation did you do regarding Mr. Collins? What footwork did you do to find or investigate Jeremy Collins?
You assume that there's a need to follow up on him because of a second intruder, and as the case progressed, that was not necessary.
Does that mean you didn't do anything else regarding Jeremy Collins?
I said it was not necessary.
And how did you determine that solely looking at his name being on the caller ID?
It's not just by his name. It's the totality of what we had collected during the course of that process, and at a point in time, I determined that it was unlikely that there was a second individual involved. The only person there was Dustin, and there was no need. It was not a logical lead to pursue.
You don't have any firsthand knowledge that Dustin had permission to be in the Roberts residence on December 13th of 2001, do you?
Personal knowledge, no.
You don't have any direct evidence that Tracy Richter did anything to authorize this pink notebook, do you?
I'm sorry?
You don't have any direct evidence to establish that Tracy had anything to do with authoring the pink notebook, do you?
The information contained in whoever...
Just yes or no, sir?
I can't answer yes or no.
It's a fact that you don't have any knowledge regarding Tracy authoring the notebook.
Tracy authoring it?
Yes.
It's Dustin's handwriting to the best of my knowledge.
Yes or no, do you have any knowledge that she specifically had a part in authoring the information in the journal?
I do not.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Just briefly, Your Honor. Special Agent Mosier, you said you didn't process the crime scene, is that correct?
Correct.
So were the bullets that were not retrieved from the home where they were located, you don't have any specific knowledge without going back and looking at reports. Is that correct?
I was in that room after it had been processed, so I'm familiar with what you're referring to.
Okay. There were some bullets that were not retrieved, correct?
Correct.
Do you know the location of the 4 bullets that were not retrieved?
Near or underneath where Dustin's head was.
Okay. So you believe that's where they were?
Yes.
May I approach?
Yes.
Special Agent Mosier, I handed you State's Exhibit 88. You recognize this photograph?
Yes, this is a piece of furniture that was in the Roberts' bedroom.
Does it appear to be a fair and accurate representation of how it looked when you were there?
Yes.
The State would offer into evidence State's Exhibit 88.
No objection, Your Honor.
It's received.
No other questions?
Any recross?
No, Your Honor.
You may step down, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next witness.